All right, welcome back, everyone. Kid here, Burn One Shadowverse Evolved channel. As always, we're bringing you the definitive tier list. We can never be wrong because we're always correct. And I'm joined here with longtime guest Shepard.
Howdy.
And I'm joined with the GOAT, Presha. You want to say hi?
What's up, everyone? I didn't know how Shepard sounds. I only play Forest, so.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? It's me. I love baseball, and all your opinions suck, and the decks that I like are good, so...
Most of the decks I like are bad. Most of the decks I like are really bad most of the time. That's why I played Discard Dragon for 9 months.
All right, I'm glad we had a very interesting intro, but this is the I don't even remember what is the set called in English.
Paragons of the Colosseum.
Yeah, Paragons of the Colosseum meta. Early on here, we've been doing some testing stuff, and we are here to give you the definitive tier list. All of the tier lists are, what's that word when people are they're false prophets. That's what I was looking for. Everyone else is a false prophet, whereas we are the true definitive tier list.
Oh, 100%.
I'm not signing off on that because I think this meta is like whoever high rolls the best it has the best deck. Yeah.
I would say that we're like the Scientology of Shadowverse. In that we're objectively correct.
Objectively, 100%.
It's right there. Yeah, I'm with Prussia. This set should be called. Can't wait for the next one.
Can't wait for the next one. Exactly.
I'm not excited for Idolmaster. I might be in
I'm just waiting to play my mono deck after Idolmaster, all right? And then I could slowly see my way out because mono is the only deck I want to play. All right, but we're talking too much shit here, so let's just get into this here. So these are the decks here we think that are going to be the most representative. Like maybe there's some other decks out there. Some people are playing some spicy stuff. We don't know. But this is kind of based off of what the JP meta was doing and what we think is good here. So I guess should we just get our tier ones out of the way fairly quick so we can talk about like what defines the meta?
I like going from left to right so we get a little bit of a they kind of spread out.
Okay, let's just do that then.
But Kit, my cousin's wife's dog's boyfriend, won with this exciting aggro control combo hybrid deck. Why is that not on the tier list?
Because that's the one person. Get the hell out of here, Shepard. What? Listen, people have spicy stuff out there. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. We don't know. We only use what data we have and what playtesting we've done. So
we joke, but definitely some random 45 card pile is winning the Grand Showdown.
Oh, absolutely.
We're joking.
There's no way that the top 8 will not contain. There's like for sure going to be at least one deck in the top 8 with 10 unplayable cards in it.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful.
It's probably going to be me.
We should do a betting pool of what's the worst card that's going to top 8 the Grand Showdown.
Dude, it's going to be that 6-drop neutral card, and I'm going to lose to it for sure on stream. Yeah.
It might be something from a Garu deck, to be honest.
Possibly. All right, let's just hop into this. We'll start from left to right, work our way through. So the first thing we have up is Uma. Nothing new is crazy going with Uma. We just got the unrestricted deck now. This is kind of like the time where Uma's just fallen off. Like, I think the highest I could place Uma is like tier 2. Like, it still does what it wants to do. And it can win games when it's allowed to get there. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I think this is easily the worst deck on this list. Like this is just
the worst deck. The worst deck. I feel
100%.
Hey, there are sword decks on this list.
Yeah, there's a Lashena on this. You think it's worse than Lashena?
Yeah, I definitely think it's worse.
Oh, okay.
I think like talking about like meta reads is like and stuff. I think like Lashena actually has a place in like if you're reading like a specific meta. I don't think there's a single Uma, because it's not aggressive enough to beat out the aggressive decks, and it's slow enough where like the control decks that are trying to beat the aggressive decks are just going to destroy it.
Right, yeah.
It's just right in the middle where it's like has nothing, and it's still a super sort of inconsistent draw what you have, what you need deck, and almost every one of these decks are like that. I don't know why you choose Uma over Fairy Dragon Fairy Dragon, over Fairy Forest, over Disdain, over any of these just draw what you need decks. Egg, I don't think this has any place in the meta at all.
I mean, I'll throw it out there. I think there's like 2, maybe 3 decks worth playing, and then the rest are just only able to live because of the fact that even the best decks are so high rolly that you can like eke out some, they have some variants that you can take advantage of. That said, I'm definitely putting Uma in tier 3 for me. I don't think it's even close to how bad the bad stuff is, because it is a functional, like, holistic package that is good. I don't know. I think it's better than Lashina or one of the swords.
Yeah, I personally think it's better than Lashina, but yeah, I'm also not willing to fight for Uma's placement on this tier list because I did some playtesting into it, and like sometimes it does the thing, and then sometimes you just like win before they can do anything, or you control the board too much before they can do anything. But yeah, I mean, if you still like playing Uma, I guess congratulations. You'll be like with some of those JP players. When we look at the stats, there's always like 2 guys out there in the 1,000 man tournament playing Uma still, because they're true lovers and believers. All right,
I just don't know what tier 4 is going to be. Like, what's tier 4 going to be? I don't think this like to me, like I don't know, like I don't know. I guess we'll get to it. We can
always move stuff down as we go along, and readjust, recalibrate our tier list here. But let's just leave it at tier 3 for now, and we'll go from there. Next up, Egg. I think out of everyone here, what Pressure, you might have the most current experience with Egg.
I've been grinding the deck for, I don't know, last 4 or 5 days, mostly just because it's the only deck that like I would consider playing that I have the cards for, because I just don't have a lot of the decent cards. I think it's interesting. I think it has some interesting matchup spreads. I think there's more play to it than like Amataz, where it's like at least there's decision making and stuff. And I'm never the guy that's like, I want to express my skill in the card game, because this is a stupid best of one, garbage game, but I do think there is very noticeable, like, hey, I understand my deck, I understand how to play the game at like an advanced level, and I am eking out wins because I'm making good plays every turn that the other high roll decks that we'll talk about later do not have, the ability to do. So if you feel like if you've been rocking this deck since it came out and you feel like you're really comfortable on it, I think it's a pretty good pick. And I don't think there's a reason to like say switch from Egg to Amataz. I think if you're swapping like complete different, like if you think you're going to like Kuwan or something, I could see it, but it's still just a high roll deck. It's still you're gonna have games where you just don't draw what you need, or you bottom deck all your Alice's with Fina, or you don't see Alice at all, and so I don't know. I think it's probably like tier 2, like maybe.
I would put Egg for sure in the upper half of tier 2.
Yeah.
I think it's just what it does is like on the face of it so powerful, and the fact that it's continued to get upgrades, like I would say it's a really good benchmarker of like everything above it I would consider acceptable to bring to the Grand Showdown, and everything below it you're only bringing because you enjoy that more. You're not gonna, I don't see any reason from like a tryhard perspective to bring anything that's going to be below Egg. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah,
like it's the bar of how good a deck has to be for me to want to play it.
I just don't like. I mean, because for me, this meta is very much like there's 2 categories of decks. There's the high roll, choose your color, choose your flavor of like high roll garbage, or the consistently very weak decks, and, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's like, oh, I want to play the blue high roll deck and I pick Kuwan, or I want to play the green high roll deck and I pick, Avataz. And so for me, it's hard to go like Egg is like the standard, because I think Egg is the standard for the high roll decks, but I don't think Egg is necessarily the standard for all the decks, because I think there is reasons
you think there's
play
decks weaker than it that you would say are still reasonable.
Actually, I think so.
Because like I guess what I'm thinking is all the decks that are more consistent than Egg that are not above it in the tier list, the reason why that, like, if I'm putting consistent decks below Egg, the reason is that they're just consistently not, their like level of consistency is not at a level to actually compete this set.
See, because then like that's where I disagree. Because like there's a couple decks here that like I think are really consistent and are worth bringing because they're consistent, but they're not. They don't hit like a egg high roll.
Yeah, they don't have
Or would you put
they don't have a
those-
crazy ceiling, but they have a really
or
high
would you-
floor.
Would you put those below egg on the tier list?
Yeah, because egg
Okay.
just. I mean, Mr. Brandon could pull up with Egg Haven. Played 2 weeks of the game, and his friend gave him Egg Haven. He could win the whole thing because you just win it. You win.
You
a
hit the
lottery,
right high rolls and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And I don't think that's really we should like necessarily account for that in what because that is like really powerful, and that's why it's tier 2. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is gonna be a tier list where we have to like put everything on, and then we'll have to like reevaluate on.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I'm kind of like I have a foot in both camps here. I do think like egg is like this is like you must be this tall to get into tier 2 type of stuff, basically. And then that's kind of like defines whether like the deck is good enough to compete against the tier 1 decks, or we're just kind of playing our whatever jank pile we want to play that we enjoy playing because we just whatever for whatever reason we just like the playstyle of that for whatever. But yeah, I guess we'll probably have to reevaluate some stuff once we move back or finish the list and maybe move some stuff around. But I think we kind of said all we could for egg. I mean, it's been out for a while. There's not a lot going on crazy different for it. So
Yeah.
next here we have Control Haven / Aegis here. This is like as much as I would love this deck to be really, really, really good. Like,
Would you?
yeah, because I like playing dumb stuff. But the deck, I don't think it got much like really extra going on for it this meta. It's like slower than like Kuon to win games, which is like a huge weakness. Because I think any deck that's slower than Kuon is just like bullied out by like all the Kuon players. Because my assumption is like 25% of the people that show up are probably on Kuon, if not more. And like another 25% or more is probably on Pixie Forest. That's like my read as far as Aegis goes. Like obviously if you can get to like the really late turns, you probably have a chance to win the game, especially once Aegis has like a huge ward on it or whatever, or make Aegis like a huge ward or whatever flavor you want to play of the deck to win. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think my issue with Aegis is that it's the worst control deck right now because it gets beat out by the other 2 control decks, like in a hard. I assume it gets beat out by Kuon, and it definitely gets beat out by Abyss.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so I just don't really think it has a place, and I'm also kind of skeptical of how much it beats Amataz. Like I don't even know if it just completely rolls that matchup compared to the other control decks. So
yeah,
pretty bad.
I would say it has just. This is not really, I guess, that fair when there's so many varieties of decks in a game like this. But to me, it's so dominated by how much better I think Abyss Control is that to me it's like, okay, if I'm gonna make the call to play Control, this is just like never the deck I'm picking.
Yeah.
That said, it's like it's definitely good. I think it can get there. I would put it to the right of egg, probably at at the edge of tier 2 or at the top of tier 3 for me.
Ooh, yeah. I don't know. I think it's next to Uma for me.
Yeah, I think it's more of a tier 3 deck. Like there's maybe some like try and true like Haven Aegis players out there that will probably perform very, very well on whatever list they come up with for how they want to combat the meta. But every time I play Control Haven, it does feel like literally the worst version of Control you could be playing right now.
Yeah. Do you think it's worse than Uma?
I would like argue that it's like relatively same power because like it has such a like I think the biggest weakness of it, the fact is like Kuon is like the de facto like you need to be fast enough to like also compete with Kuon. If you're not, every extra turn past like turn 8 at 8 play points or whatever, like every turn is just like, well, if they have the Kuon D shift bullshit, then I just lose. Like there's not a lot of ways to really defend against it very well. I guess maybe like you pass turn with like 8 play points up or something obnoxious like that, right?
You can't even do that because they have aura.
Oh yeah, that's all. Yeah,
And so that, and
Shiki-
sorry, so that's the argument against it being worth, or sorry, because is that the argument for Uma being better than a bit or Aegis, or?
I feel like they're relatively the same power. I wouldn't really care whether which one's better than the other one. If personally, if I had to pick between these two decks to play, and like I'm forced to like gun to my head at the showdown, I had to play one of these two. I would probably just play Uma over Aegis, possibly. I
just
would lean
don't-
more that way. But what do you say?
I was just gonna say I just still don't think there's a single matchup Uma beats. I don't think there's a single matchup that Uma wins. And Aegis, it destroys the sword decks for sure. You know,
Yeah.
like 100%.
Here's my take. Like, if you're watching this to figure out what deck to play, obviously I wouldn't recommend either of them. If you're one of the 4 people in the world who has the capacity to top 8, or 4 people in North America that has the capacity to top 8 with Control Haven, you already know who you are, you know, because you've been playing it for 6 sets. And if you don't know that, then this isn't the deck for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're definitely
pretty
not
much.
selling anyone on Aegis, right?
Like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but if
we're definitely
if you're
prepared.
Haven curious, like, this is not the right time. You know,
Yeah.
like, just jump in, play your yokai, and get your free wins if you want to play control that way.
Yeah. I'll just leave it like this for now, and we can reevaluate once everything gets put in. Let's kind of move on here. We have this is kind of like the thief aggro whole archetype with courtyard dance. Is that what the name of the spell?
I mean, to me,
Court dance is a different
or court
deck.
dance? Sorry.
Court dance
Yeah.
is 2 to the right, or no?
Yeah, no. So to me, Octress is just
Oh, sorry.
normal
Yeah, I
usage.
forgot Ramya is
This
over
is-
here.
this
Yeah.
is more like
Sorry, this is more like the straight up thief stuff
Yeah,
here.
the thief stuff.
Yeah, this is, which is like, from what I understand, you guys are talking about the mid-rangey version of thief.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like this deck last set. I don't like this deck this set. I think it's really bad.
Yeah, it's like I wasn't even that much of a hater of it last set,
Mhm.
and then I played it in a tournament, and it was like, yeah, this feels off. It's like I'd rather not be doing this. But also like this set, it's like, like if you dodge Kuon for 7 rounds, maybe, and then even then you still just get bullied by people that like know how to play against sword.
Yeah.
If you ever play against Kuon, it's like, we used to joke about the matchup into D-Shift, but like, it didn't come up because there weren't that many D-Shift players. But taking this to a tournament where all you're doing is speeding up how soon they're going to get the Kuon turn.
Yeah, they're like consistently turn 7 coup on D shift like against this matchup, and we already assume like a minimum of like the 4th of the community or at like the Grand Showdown is going to be on Kuon. This is probably the worst time to be playing this deck. Probably the only lines I ever see, even the line where like you high roll and mill like there are 2 copies of D shift into the grave, I still think Kuon like the deck itself is still powerful enough to win the game before you can do anything about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing too, is like the only way that you can really take advantage of how it does go in the other direction, right? Where like they're filling up their own graveyard, is you have to like draw 2 Octresses like really early on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even then you could still get comboed out. Because like 2 Octresses is good, but it's not going to win they're not going to win the game in one turn. They're just insane value plays.
Yeah.
Another aspect that I've been, thinking about with this deck and Octress in general, like, because there are some builds of the Ralmia deck that we'll talk about, or the Courtly Dance, that have Octress and some of the stuff. The other aspect is Octress in the meta. There's just not a lot of stuff to steal that's good right now. Like Kuon doesn't have anything you really care about stealing besides like draw cards, and Amatas has nothing at all.
Well, it's because they're also synergy based is the problem. There's not people don't
yeah.
play a lot of random generic value cards. Like, what are you gonna do? Get a Fina?
Well, even against Egg, like stealing the soldier was really strong.
Well, stealing the soldier is wrong because you're denying them from bringing it back.
No, stealing the soldier is strong.
And it gets a counter.
Yeah, that's why it's strong. It's strong
Yeah,
because 2-mana 3/4 that deals 2 damage to the face.
But it's also like now against a lot of these decks, like against all the disdain cards that say, do some disdain thing. They're not legal targets, right?
Yeah.
Like all the Uma stuff that's like, do this thing with an Uma card. It's like all legal targets. I mean, not that people are going to be playing Uma. That said, I would put this right between Haven, Control Haven, and Uma for me.
Yeah, I think so.
That's kind of where I was thinking as well.
Like, I just think there's decks that Control Haven beats that you pick it because you want to beat those decks. I'm like, I feel almost about Octress the way you feel about Uma, where I'm like, I just don't know what deck this beats.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Like, I don't know what,
Either.
when you pick Octress, what deck are you like, oh, I really want to sit down across from X? Like,
Yeah.
set one
'Cause even,
sword? Like, I don't know.
Because even the high roll situations for Octress are like still contingent on like them having no play points open and no like removal at all. Like I'm just thinking like, whoa, what if you get like turn 5 the storm guy and it's like, well, it still dies to snipe and it's just not good.
All right, I think we're kind of in agreement there. Moving on here to Disdain Dragon. I guess, Pressure, you want to talk about this? Like, I like the deck a lot. I've already talked it a lot about with you, so.
Yeah, we both have been playing it a little bit. I like the deck. I think it's sort of kind of in the high roll bucket of decks. I think it's more consistent. It has a lot more card draw and it has the one searcher for the deck. I'm just sort of not sure what the correct build for it is because of course the top 8 JP list. I don't know, man.
That was a list.
14 rounds. I don't know about that one, man. Like I feel like Dragon Summoner. I love Dragon Summoner, but not in this deck because if you miss, sayonara, bro. It's over. I don't know, man.
I mean, I think it's crazy to me how much better Disdain got with so few cards added to the deck for me. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not like the Disdain package was completely transformed this set. It's just every way that it got better was really clean. And I'm pretty high on Disdain.
I think it's just my issue with it is it's the same deck from last set, but it's using like the new like really strong, almost broken, Feline.
The best one drop in the game.
That can be put in any other dragon deck. And so sort of one of my questions is like, is Disdain even really the best dragon deck? Because I would argue like maybe no, just because it's like, why would you I still am not sold on playing Disdain Dragon in a really high level tournament instead of Amataz. Because to me it feels almost similar sort of high roll and sort of
I think Amataz is just the best deck. Spoilers. So that's true for like every deck for me. Is I think I'd rather be on Amataz. I think Disdain is for sure better than Egg.
Yeah, 100.
Yeah.
They're both a little like they're both obviously have elements of high roll, but I think both the floor and the ceiling for Disdain is just way higher than Egg.
I mean, I think there's argument for this being a tier 1 deck. To be honest,
I view Disdain as like the top of tier 2,
and then bottom tier 1 type of scenario.
Well, no, I don't think it's bottom of tier 1 because I think bottom of tier I think tier 1 is 2 decks that I think are just clearly the best decks, and then I think tier 2 is a bunch of decks that it's like not the worst case to bring, and I just don't think Disdain is up to snuff with the top 2.
I kind of disagree because I think Disdain like beats Amataz or like
that's what I was gonna say. I think Disdain has a slightly favored matchup. It's not like heavily favored, but it is definitely favored enough that like if you just played against Forest all day, you'd probably be happy playing playing as a Disdain player. I think also one of the factors of too that like this is why I like it. I think like Disdain is like bottom of tier 1, top of tier 2 type of stuff because once you get going against Kuan, they can't necessarily always use cards against you during your turn to remove your followers. If they don't want to give you value. I played Kuan into Pressure a lot playing, and it made some of my turn like decisions. I'm like, well, okay, if I start sniping things, he's just going to get drawing cards and stuff like this and getting like slightly extra value. Like, yes, some cards you can play and deal damage to them on their turn because the bonus they're getting off of it at the end of turn doesn't really matter. But there are like weird scenarios, especially early game, where you're like, oh crap, he played the 2-drop dude, and I can't really do anything about it during his turn, so I have to wait. Go back to my turn and then spend my play points to remove that follower. Then he goes into his next turn where I can't really react to anything he's playing now. And now I almost feel like I'm like a slight step behind. But even with that being said, though, Kuan's still powerful enough, and it like consistently wins around the same time every game. So as long as you get to like turn 7, 8, or even 9, if somehow, I feel like Kuan usually ekes out the win more often than not, but it still makes it so it's kind of awkward for the Kuan player on how they sequence their turns, because sometimes they, you accidentally give extra value to the Disdain player. And then that's that's the only thing that like makes me go like, oh, this might be bottom of tier 1, where it has like maybe a okay matchup against Kuan and a slightly favored matchup into Forest, but then you always deal with the same thing with all these top decks right now is you draw order, like high roll, who goes first, and that feels like it decides the match more often than the actual decks.
I think the big problem is like your deck has to beat the aggro draws of Sanguine Abyss and like the nut draws of Fairy Forest, but it also has to beat the top end of Yokai and the Clock of Kuan, and you just like every deck that's not one of those where they have like that linear kind of game plan has to pick and choose like where it's going to take its wins and losses. And I just don't think that Disdain is good enough against like everything, and I don't think its package alone is like a good linear strategy. Like with Fairy Forest, you can say I'm not so much thinking about beating this or that. You're like, I have a linear game plan and I'm going to execute it or I'm not, and if I execute it, I'm probably winning most matchups. I feel like Disdain isn't quite in that same boat.
Well, I think that I don't know. I think you're sort of under, play. Like I think Disdain actually has a really good matchup. It's into aggro decks and not like a really good matchup into Amataz, but like I don't think it's 50-50.
No, what I'm
Like,
saying
I
is
think
you have to beat. I'm saying is like if you're not going to play one of those decks, you have to beat both, right? Like,
well, yeah, but I think every one of the decks in the tier 1 has that though. Like
do you think Disdain beats Yokai?
No, I think yeah, because that's why
That's
I
my
think
problem. That's my problem with it, right?
Yeah, but I don't think cool like I don't think Kuon beats Yokai either. Like I think it's a it's a not a triangle but like a square or whatever. Like to me when we get to control this, like I think the tier 1 decks, I think it's Amataz, Kuon, Disdain, and Control of this. Those are the four.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
Where's Sanguine for you?
No, I don't think.
I guess
I
we'll
think
find
Sanguine's
out.
tier 2. I think Sanguine's tier
I think
2.
I think this is all right. Well, where do you want to put Disdain? Kid?
We'll just throw it just like right above Egg for now and go from there.
This is definitely a tier list where we're going to need to reevaluate at the end.
Yeah. All right, moving on here. Sanguine Abyss, the aggro stuff. My only experience so far with it was actually playing against Pressure like 3 games maybe or whatever. I mean, the deck seems like it does what it wants to do, and it can be fast, but it also seemed like because you're also like punching yourself in the face a lot, if you don't maximize value, you're going to lose the game very quickly.
That's one of my main issues is there's no it's almost like more one-dimensional than Sword, like aggro Sword, where there is no other place than the face, like it's not you just have no other options, and I really don't like hitting yourself so much because you really do hit yourself a lot. And I also don't like how many cards there are that are combo reliant. And I don't mean like multiple cards, but just like 1 or 2 cards. Like Gravy is sick when you hit him off the Latham, going first, you Latham turn 2 and he gets, he doesn't get answered and you hit Gravy. But then you're like sitting with a hand of like Gravy, Dark General, Jerry, and it's turn 2. And you're like, the game's lost, because I have no other options and I have no other ways to play. Some of the other decks that are like aggressive have other ways to play. So I think it's still a really strong deck. Like, I think it's, I mean, I guess since we have Disdain in tier 2, I think it's below Disdain. But to me, in my mind, it's top of tier 2. But obviously we have Disdain in top of tier 2, so.
I can't believe it. I'm going to agree with Prussia in terms of location, which is I think on this list I would put it between Disdain and Egg. I think it's really good, but I think it has all those problems. And also all those problems with consistency. And like you mentioned, every time I've tested this deck, you take so much damage that you're just like, it makes you a dog to a lot of matchups, because you just put yourself in people's lethal range without necessarily guaranteeing a lethal on them, like there's a lot of positions against like Egg where they have a 1 to 2 turn clock on you, but you don't have a 1 to 2 turn clock on them.
Yeah, like every time you pick up this deck, your life total says 20 at the start of the game, but honestly, that is not your maximum life total. You're actually like starting with like 15 life, like unironically, because by like turns 4 or so, you've pinged yourself so many times already to get extra bonuses and stuff. You're just kind of like, you know, slowly just losing the game out of control. So it's weird because in some of the high rolly hands, it is a very fast deck and can get really obnoxious, and then the low roll hands just feel miserable because even play the game, you're just literally, you know, cutting yourself until until hopefully you like high roll into something that wins you the game. And I feel like there's not a lot of really good comeback factor for the deck. Whereas like a lot of the stuff in tier 1 and like higher on tier 2, like they have tools to like swing the tempo into their favor. Whereas like you have to hit the ground running as Sanguine Abyss from the start of the game, have the perfect curve, and then you can like outpace some of these tier 1 decks and tier 2 decks. But if you don't and your game is more average to below average, you're just going to be like eating garbage the entire time.
The other thing is, I think this is and this is something I've been trying to find while, you know, we've been exploring this meta, is this is probably the worst this game's been in terms of first, you know.
Who goes first? Yeah.
This to me is the worst
turn
of
go
the competitive going second deck.
Yeah,
like,
I hard agree.
This is easily the worst, and you have to play like some of the, like I've been looking through like the card pool, and there's a couple cards that I've been messing around with, you know, with this deck. But I think the importance of 2-drops that can evo is really high in this meta because of how skewed going first versus going second is. And you just have to have that sort of, you know, silver bullet or out to, wow, I'm going second, I just have to hard mulligan for like my tempo, you know, regain or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, you were talking about, you know, starting at 15 health, you know, digital, when you know, in the bad, like going first metas, if you went second, you started at
10 health.
So
yeah.
now you're starting at 5 health basically. And I don't know, I don't think that, I think this, you know, we'll talk about Mr. A later, but definitely I think this might, like, I don't mean this to sound like bad or mean, but I think if you think you're like a good player, I don't think you'd ever bring
this is for sure your friend deck. Like, hey, my friend's coming to the tournament, I'm gonna hand him this deck and tell him just turn your dude sideways and say attack face. I don't think there's like so little skill expression outside of how good you can manipulate a dice roll.
I mean, I think there's still sort of, I at least old Agrobiss, like I think was the premier sort of just understanding like how combat and how the game and how the board works. Like,
I mean, all decks are hard. Card games are hard. I just think that, like, compared to other options, you don't get to.
I still think this is harder than Amatas. I think this is harder than Amatas.
Really?
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
I think the decks I play require a lot of skill, and I play Amatas. So.
Oh my god!
Yeah, all right. His resume. I don't know about that one, Steve.
Oh my god. Okay, let's talk about Lashana. I think this deck is booty cheeks. Please convince me otherwise. Go.
Dog shit. Get this out of here. It was bad last set. It's bad this set.
I think it's one of those decks that actually has a really interesting place in the meta, because I think, you know, and we talked about this in the card review, you know, but if Rune got 2 of the best like on-body removals that the game has seen. They got Cursecrafter, which everyone's talking about, and Mysteria. And I think, like, I've made a Lashana list, and I want to try it. I'm prefacing this with I have not tested it yet, and it could just be awful. But you just have so much removal. You have so much removal, and there's no amulet hate going around. If you can just sort of not get destroyed by aggro, which is going to be hard because hard to get destroyed by because you have like 30 cards of removal. And on body removal, you know, and Cursecrafter, which is the best removal in the game, or removal guy, that if you can just somehow sneak in the Lashana, you just win, because there's a lot of decks that cannot deal with healing to a turn. Like, it's kind of surprising. Like, Guan, I think is potentially has a really good, or Lashana has a pretty good matchup in the Guan, because you just never take damage from them in the early game. and then you set and you just free set up Lashana. There's nothing they're doing on turn 4,
Yeah.
and then you just gain this sort of almost armor, against the Kuon, because there's a couple key like numbers for Kuon. I think 23 is my number that I've sort of thought up as the reasonable amount on like I don't want to say high roll, but like on a really good roll that Kuon's going to be able to kill you, because that's double Kuon, Storm, D shift, hit for what would that be? That will be 14, then 18, then either Crimson Storm, so that's like 21. You can even account for like them having a 2/2 on the board, so that gets to like 20, 22, 23. But I want to be in that 23, 24 health range, and I think that's super easy to do against Lashana. Or with Lashana, I mean. So I don't know. I'm not like here to say this is a tier 2 deck. I still think it's tier 3. I just think it's an interesting thing to test if you feel like you want to try to sort of beat the meta, which I don't think the meta is beatable, but I'm still coping. A man's cope will never die.
Understandable.
I'm gonna go out and just stake my claim, which is I think this is the deck that's worse than Uma.
No way.
I just think Lashana is not I don't think Lashana is a playable card, and I think everybody pretends otherwise.
Because you still have 37 other good rune cards.
Yeah, I don't know. It's your game plan. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased by how much better every other game plan is, but like, I don't know why that would ever be how you're choosing to try and win a game of Shadowverse.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I think Pressure brings up a lot of good points, and I like pretty much agree with a lot of those points. And I do think if Lashana versus Kuon, I do think Lashana might be like slightly favored, just on theory. Obviously, I haven't played the matchup, but I think it just does so much like such mediocre work into like almost every other matchup. Like, what other matchups are we like hard beating because we have like the Lashana board and stuff?
Yeah, I'm not convinced it beats Kuon. I think you have some interesting ideas, but that's my thing where I'm like, I don't think you beat any other decks. Like, I think you still die to the other aggros, and you die, and then the controls, they can go on top of you, especially because they have win cons that are capable of it.
I don't know, like it's not a deck where it's like this beats every other deck. It's this deck beats the
one of the tier 1 decks.
And Kuon. It's this deck beats Amataz and Kuon. And yeah, if I see the random Aegis player, I'll just concede and go eat lunch. Like it's fine. I that's why I don't think it's like tier 2 or whatever. I just think I do think it has a pretty good chance to beat the aggressive decks, because it's, if we're assuming that Kuon has a chance to beat aggressive decks, which may, because if Kuon gets destroyed by Control Abyss and gets destroyed by, aggro, is this a fraudulent deck? I don't think it is, but if Kuon does beat some of the aggressive decks, which I think it does, and it does, Lashana has more removal than it, because it doesn't have to play the like 10 like D shift, other stuff, like combo cards and stuff. You just can play 30 cards of removal, not die to aggro, and then they run out of steam, and you just set up this thing that makes it impossible for them to win. Because if you heal twice off the Lashana thing passively, you just win.
Where do you put Lashana on this tier list?
I think top tier 3. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it's better than Control Haven.
I mean, Control Haven beats it, but I think it's better than it.
I think I would need to see what you're saying put into action before I believe it,
Well, because your argument is you don't have a game plan.
No, I just think the game plan is worse than other decks' game plans, because the game plan revolves around tutoring out Lashana, which is this 4-drop that doesn't do anything. And then I guess you were saying that the numbers that you crack play well into other decks, plus you have the removal suite, which, I mean, I'll give it to you. It's nice, but then I don't know why you're not just playing Kuon.
Because it dies to Control Abyss, and it dies to high roll and Amataz, and you have less removal, and you're more dependent on seeing more of the removal. That's why.
All right.
One doesn't have.
I would need to. I just would need to
Yeah.
see it. I guess I haven't tested it. I
I
would need to
think
see
the
if it's gonna
big
play
thing
anything.
is also I would need to see some gameplay or some testing. I like I'll be fine like putting it here for now.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not dying on the hill at all, you
Yeah.
know. But it's
Yeah.
just like I definitely think compared to like at least if we're comparing it to like Uma and the this you know the usurpation, it's like you at least have game plans against the best decks.
hmm
The other those two decks don't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
All right. Let's just move our boy Amata's Fit Pixie Forest into tier 1 here. This is like I hate calling this an aggro deck because in some ways it's an aggro deck and in others it's not. But the deck is obviously very powerful. It has a pretty good matchup into Kuon in particular, which is also going to be a popular deck. But then it kind of peters out where it can, depending on how you draw and how you play out your game and really like decide whether you're going to go for like a more of a mid game burst or we're going to be the whole aggro game plan and just like push up our pixies with a bunch of like 3/3s and giving them storm over and over again. The deck does end up losing a lot of gas at one point, usually around the turns when Kuon is about to pop off or is popping off. So like this is like the quote unquote quick deck of tier 1, I would say. And then if you want to play a slower deck, that's also tier 1. Kuon's the other one, obviously. But what are your guys' thoughts on it? Because like I know Prish and I talked heavily about how Pixie Dragon is busted with Fairy Circle and stuff. So
I think this is. I mean, I think this there's like a skill point in the curve somewhere, and if you're below that point in the skill curve, this is the best deck you could play. And if you're above that point in the skill curve, there's a different deck that I think you should play, where you get to kind of leverage that more, just because it's such a high rolly deck. But like, I think the fact that its high roll is so good and its mid roll is so good just puts it far and away above almost every other deck. And I think one of the most interesting parts of it, I guess I don't know if interesting is the right word. It's just how you get to these game states where there's not removal from the you can't easily remove things from the EX zone in the quantity that you can produce threats. So like even against decks that are going to be playing like damage based removal and stuff like that, you can have your fairies sitting back, get these turns where you combo off. I agree with everything you said. I think I don't know. This is the deck I'm playing. I think it's good.
Yeah, it's strong. It's just yeah,
it's boring how strong it is, right? Like
yeah.
It's just like they made the deck for you. They just printed unacceptable cards and they put them in forest and they gave them all the word fairy.
Yeah, I think like I mean we talked about this multiple times already leading up to this point, but this is legit is the format where the person who high rolls better is always going to be winning for the most part in as far as the tier list goes. And unfortunately, out of all the decks that have high rolls, Amata's Forest has the highest ceiling by far compared to everyone else.
I think a big part of the deck too is that part of its high roll is just going first, which you'll do in hopefully half of your games.
Yeah.
Like for most hands that you draw, like your chances of winning when you go first just spike so much. And that's a pretty low ask of a high roll, right? Is if your high roll happens 50% of the time. And the other 50% of the time you're not dead. Like you can win games going second. But when you go first and you draw any one of like 3 cards, you just kind of laugh.
Yep, pretty much. A lot of times it's just like I go Fairy Circle, Fairy Dragon, let's play Amata's out with the Fairy Dragon, push up the guys, give Storm, push damage, pass you, and then Pressure's like, okay, let's just go to game 2.
Yeah. I think one thing that really interests me is how if you look at the numbers for the Grand Prix that this deck destroyed in, Force was like what 4th or 5th represented, like it was really low, crazy conversion rate, and then like was gone for like a lot of the rest of the meta in Japan. And it's weird to me, like I just feel like there's something out there that beats this deck that we don't know. But again, a man's cope will never die. I think this is the deck that's gonna send me into retirement for a while. Like I just can't handle. This is such a digital deck. This is everything design wise that's bad about Psy games. They are not good at designing cards, and I thought they were going to do well in the paper game, but they didn't. And this is just every everything that's wrong with digital, honestly, in one deck in paper. It's really wild.
I would say yeah, that's an accurate statement, because for me, one of the most frustrating parts of digital is when how much of the decks come pre-made. And you'd hope that as the card pool increased, that would be less of the case in this game, and it kind of is in some ways. But then sometimes they just print cards that they just go, oh, you put these 24 cards together. Okay, cool, thank you.
It's sort of like Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not like a Yu-Gi-Oh! Expert, but for what it's like, Shadowverse digital, for the recent, in recent memory, is always like on archetype that they printed for you deck that's super good, or when it's not an archetypal deck and it's like 40 cards that someone put together, it's like the most broken deck of all time.
Yeah, that's true.
People found the 40, the 40, and it's like, if anyone remembers the Flame and Glass Portal deck with Castle, that was 40 cards that people put together, and it was probably one of the best decks in the history of the game. So this is definitely leaning. Yeah, Avatars is definitely leaning more towards the the Shadow Raider side of the broken spectrum. But
that said, I do think what's interesting is, like, do you guys put I guess we'll talk about this, because I think we're about to hit a few good decks in a row here in a second. But, like, is this your GOAT for this set?
In my opinion, I think Amataz is the best deck in the format.
I agree with that.
I
But that said, I think the next best deck, in my opinion, is close enough that with a little bit more consistency, that I think there's a point in the skill curve where you should play that.
What were you saying, Pressure? Do you disagree?
I guess it's. I mean, it is. Yeah, it is, because it's just. I don't think there's a lot of people that can, like, just their first Shadowverse deck is Kuan and they could win the Grand Showdown. Definitely someone's first deck could be Amataz and they could win the Grand Showdown.
Yeah.
Like 100%. And I'm not even, like, exaggerating,
Yeah. All right, moving on here, we have Hunter Force. Actually, Pressure and I played a few games before we got together to record this against Hunter. Deck surprisingly looks, and I mean, Pressure, you can talk more about it specifically because you're the one playing it, but playing against it, it consistently does what you think it's going to do, and it feels pretty solid. Like, sitting against it, I don't ever feel like pressured I'm going to lose the game, but definitely there are points in the game where I'm like, ooh, I am losing. Like, they're getting a lot of value here, and I'm having to do weird things to, like, make sure I don't lose the game. Like, it feels like if you want to play like a mid-range forest deck, you probably just play this, honestly. That's what it seems like, because it like I said, it seems pretty good playing against it. What are your thoughts, Russia?
Yeah. So, prefacing this with, I'm wrong a lot of the times. I hated Ligma. Like, I was like, this deck sucks. This card sucks. Everything is awful. This is actually kind of a really sick deck. It really reminds me of mid-range sword from, like, the good days of digital. And we're just everything you're doing has just a lot of value, and I think that it might be okay, because it's like, I'll say this, I think it's the most consistent deck in the format, like, easily. Now, is it consistently good? That's the question, and that's what needs to be ironed out. I don't think I'm ready to go, like, here we go, dark horse, here we go, this is the deck, this is, what we're gonna do. But it's definitely the deck where I played a couple games and I'm gonna probably spend the next, like, week, like, playing it and trying it, because I don't want to play Amataz and I don't want to play Kuan. And I actually really have been enjoying the deck a lot, because it feels like you always have a good amount of cards in hand. All the cards are doing something, which is one of my worries when I was reading all the cards, was like, all of these cards don't do anything, but actually they kind of do, because just being 4 health is really strong. You have Archer, you have all your Evo guys, but just, all the rest of your stuff is 4 health, and you're really, like, building a board really fast and keeping the hand size So I don't know. I think right now I'd say it's like tier 3-ish, but with the upside of, maybe going to bottom of tier 2, maybe.
Bottom of tier 2, that's crazy.
I guess
played
you
with
didn't
it
hear what
enough.
I just said though. But yeah. I mean, like
I've not tested this deck at all. I can't give any input.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty in agreement with pressure here. I think there probably is a hunter list out there, like the perfect 40, that's like, damn, this deck is actually like feels really good. Obviously we haven't tested a bunch or like theory crafted enough with the hunter lists yet. But I also am kind of in that camp where I legit think this is kind of like top of tier 3 as the initial test of I did with pressure. And then I think if we like really put our minds to it and like really talked it out and play tested a bunch, I do think this deck could be like bottom of tier 2 like pretty easily, and like maybe even a little bit higher depending on like if this is the play style that you really like to play. But I was pretty thoroughly impressed with like how consistently it was doing like every game. Pressure was getting off things consistently over and over again, and it was just a very slight annoyance the entire time that I had to deal with like these same scenarios over and over again. And just to be clear too, like we only really played the Disdain versus the Hunter matchup, and while I was on Disdain testing some stuff out, and so like that's all the experience I have with the deck. But I'm not like high on the deck, obviously, but it's a very interesting deck, and like people who are interested in playing Hunter should spend some time to really research and figure out if there's a perfect 40 out there that can combat this meta.
Yeah, like if you want to feel like you are playing the game and not leaving it all up to chance, I think this is the best deck for that, because it's the only deck on this list that feels really consistent. And then I think the biggest question marks are how good is it in how good is it in Indomitas and how good is it in Kuan. And if either of those are like fine, then I could see you making the decision like, hey, I don't want to lose games because I
Low
never
rolled.
drew. Yeah, I never drew
Yeah.
Amataz or Fairy Dragon. I think the other thing that's interesting to me is how much of the, at least on the Discord that I've seen, a lot of the forest, quote unquote, like mains or whatever, very down on Amataz, not power level, but very up on Hunter, and seeing a lot of what people are talking about and stuff. I was like, what are we doing? Okay, I guess I'll test it out myself. Hearing some of my other friends, like play against it or play, and yeah, from the games me and Kit played, it felt pretty good. Another thing is like Force beating Dragon is like pretty, like that's not something that is inherently happens in this game. So that's that's the thing. You just have a lot of options. You have a lot of tools.
I think the biggest takeaway you should take for this deck is that if you like decks with really high floors, this is the deck for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Will this deck have a high ceiling? Probably not. It's like has this sliver cut out of like this small range here where like your worst games don't feel horrible and your best games don't feel amazing, but you're always in this like feels good spot,
If the Forest mains on Discord like it, I think it might be the worst deck. just based on historical trends here.
I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. Results of. I mean, yeah. I again, it was not not excusing the power level of Amataz, but just the fact that you have no control. Yeah. You have no control. A monkey could play Amataz.
Well, I think the thing too, this format and a lot of these decks is there's two kinds of like consistency / variance, which is like there's internal consistency, right? Did you draw your Fairy Dragon, whatever, and there's external consistency, which is like you see that like more with decks like Kuon, where it's like your matchup consistency, right? Like how often did you play against X, Y, or Z? And so I guess I would need to do some testing against Hunter and see, okay, it's consistent, but also what's the play against the field? Like what's the good matchup? What's the bad matchup? How often are you hitting those? Because like if it just loses to 30% of the decks, then I wouldn't want to play a consistent deck that can't beat a lot of the field, because then I wouldn't consider that consistent. Does that make sense?
Well, but what if it only loses to like the tier 3 decks?
Well, that's yeah. That I mean, that's the best deck, right?
Because like I feel like Kuon, like like I think there's a lot of decks that are going to be popular that are hating on it, that could destroy it.
Yeah.
And it's also like on paper you have a good this example, you have a good matchup in the sword against Kuon, not Disdain, but the aggro sword. But hey, I missed one angelic snipe, I guess I'm taking 5 and I die. Like there's a lot of that with some of these decks, and I feel like Hunter is, if you want to sort of get away from that, try it's worth trying. It's also not that expensive, like all the cards are like really cheap because
Yeah.
they're not that good.
All right. Let us move on to. I mean, we could just put this up here now. I think no surprise, Kuon. The one thing I want to say about Kuon is like I don't think Kuon is the best deck in the format. Like I've already said I think Amataz is. But the thing about Kuon is that he is the guy that warps this meta the most, unironically, in my opinion, because the issue with how he messes with the meta is that Amataz is like the early game aggro-ish deck where like this is going to be the quote unquote quick deck of the format that's the best, and it happens to just like barely get under Kuon. So that's what pushes Amataz over for me on beating Kuon. It's like I feel like it has the slight favor a lot of the times. But the thing is, Kuon oppresses all the other possible decks that could be in tier 1 or make this format like more than like a multi-deck format instead of just being like basically two deck format. Kuon's like so consistent at being like, it's turn 7, you are losing the game now. If you don't kill me here, I am winning. Like it doesn't necessarily have like an inevitability, but it has the consistency of like, it's turn 7, turn 8. I'm pushing like 18 damage face now. Prepare to lose the game. That's my feeling. And because other decks don't have that same window where like they consistently win on turn 7, a lot of decks like their quote unquote high roll is like I win on turn 7, maybe if I'm lucky turn 6. But a lot of times I'm winning on turns 8, 9, and 10. That's what it feels like all the other decks are like right now that want to compete. And unfortunately, Kuon is just the best of the like turn 7 and later win strategy decks.
I think that's a really apt way to describe how it does warp the metagame. Like to me, I see the Kuon turn 7 is anything that's slower than it in trying to win the game is just not really a viable deck. And so you have to try and be faster. And then Amataz is just the best deck at being faster. Like at most consistently getting under it. And then the only toss-ups that I need to play more is like I haven't played a lot of Kuon versus Yokai Control. But yeah, I think it's pretty easily. I said at the start of this, I think there's like 2 top tier decks, and I think it's these 2.
Yeah.
I think everything else is like you should only play if you're really drawn to it. I think maybe Yokai Control is acceptable, but I would say generally speaking, I would bring one of these 2 to the Grand Showdown if you're just trying to win.
Yeah,
you have anything to add, Prussia? You think
everything? I think just everything you guys said. I think it's also just this is just how I sort of especially in a meta like this where there is a lot of options, because that is what, or not options like if necessarily if you're just unprepared, and you bring some deck you're trying to win, but a lot of previous metas have not had many options. It's like maybe 3 playable decks. This meta has a lot of playable decks, and I think that my sort of thought process is like I don't think I'm lucky enough to go through 7 rounds and then 3 rounds of top 8 with Kuon and not falter somewhere, and if you do, you being the general then go ahead, play it. I don't think it's there's enough like there where it's like, hey, I think I'm so good at the game that I'm going to be able to eke out different matches where I should have lost, because there's honestly not there's not a lot of skill with this deck.
Yeah,
I mean, I think there's like a certain. I think the play with Kuon is like not about. You can kind of just flounder and almost play cards at random and still turn 7 people. I think the play that the deck has is crafting your first 7 turns in a way that doesn't get you killed first, which you only have so much control over. But I think you have a little bit more control over your game plan than Amataz does their game
100%.
plan. Which my problem with the variance is this: what I was saying earlier is that Kuon I think has a lot of matchup variance, where it's just going to come down to how many Amatazes and aggro abysses did you hit versus how many disdains and etc. did you hit.
Yeah, I think that kind of sounds about right. Let's move on to this next stick here. Gyaru, I believe that's his name, right? Gyaru or whatever. Dragon. You guys know what I'm talking about. This is kind of like the quote unquote rampish deck for Dragon this format, right? Maybe not even really.
You like ramping to 5.
Yeah.
You like 5 drops.
I was talking to some people and I sort of, said like, wait, I think people think of me as like the ramp guy because of that one tournament.
Oh, that's one tournament.
Yeah, the one tournament, But I was building a lot of. I have like 50 ramp decks or this that and very fast I was like, nah, this guy is not it. This is not the guy. There was probably like a 12-hour period where I was like, this is the guy. He's not the guy.
He is not him. That's the best way to describe it.
If you could, if it was 5 mana 3/4 fanfare, search your deck for Wyvern Cavalier, and then have the same Evo, then yeah. But it's you're just not gonna have Wyvern Cavalier. That's the only time it's playable. When you have the Wyvern Cavalier.
The other problem is that everything is like, you're spending with Evos on all these 5 drops, 6 or 7 mana, and it's like, what's everybody else doing on turn 6 and 7? They're killing you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting like, here's my value. I think this is for sure tier 3.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're on tier 3 though. That's what I wonder.
I don't know. I feel like I was about to say I think
like
it's worse than Haven. Yeah, because like at least Haven has a game plan that doesn't involve playing bad 5 drops.
Yeah.
All right, we're kind of in agreement there. We'll move on to Yokai Control Abyss basically here. I think this is the dark horse of the format. I think this deck could randomly be like really, really, really good, or maybe it just doesn't get there. But like on paper, I have not tested this yet. This is actually the deck I'm supposed to be testing this weekend. But on paper, it seems like it has the opportunity to like maybe combat the tier 1 and tier 2 decks well enough and do well enough into like the general meta that this might actually possibly be a tier 1 deck. That's like kind of my personal read on it right now. What have you guys thought about Yokai?
I totally agree. I think this deck is like 100% the one that people aren't looking at as much as obviously the top 2. I know that people are excited for it. I think the cards are just insane. I think that it's so powerful. I think it's better than Disdain. My only problem is that I've played with I haven't found the 40 that feels right into the meta. And like, if I was seriously considering, bringing this to the Grand Showdown, which obviously I'm not, I would spend the next 30 days finding those 40 cards because I do think they exist.
Yeah, I think number one, I think it is one of the top 4. I still think I think the Disdain and this Control Abyss should be in tier 1 along with them because I think Abyss has a really good matchup in the Kuwan, a visible game plan against Avatar. Does it happen? Maybe not.
You can draw the cards to beat Fairy.
Yeah, and then Dragon is just completely destroyed. I mean, Control Abyss has always completely destroyed Dragon since they got the discard stuff. But it doesn't fix the issue of inconsistency because Abyss it only sees the top 12 cards of their deck. They're only going to see 12 cards in a game, and I just don't trust the deck enough right now because I haven't tested a ton, but enough to go like I'm bringing this to a 6 to 7 round tournament, and because I just don't think there is 12 cards that if you see these 12 cards every time you win like even a majority of the matchups. Like there's going to be matchups like, okay, Prey, when they cut their deck Prey, can I get my removal side of the deck? And then you go Ginsetsu, Death's Breath, Israfil. All right, let me go over to Subway, and I just it's one of those things that's like I see the plan, I see everything. I just don't think there's a reason. It's not more consistent than Amitaz, Kuwan, or Disdain, where I feel like it would be the play. And again, this is before me testing it because it is something I'm gonna test a lot. So
I would pick it. I think it's better than Disdain, partially because of its matchup in Disdain. I just think it has outside of the top two, it has the best matchup spread.
Yeah. I think it's definitely the bad deck killer.
Honestly, just talking about this, and I know you're saying this is a 4-deck format. I honestly feel like this might be a tier list where you move everything from tier 3 into tier 4, and then you move Egg to tier 3, and then you have 2 decks in tier 1, 2 decks in tier 2.
I don't really agree with that because I don't think
because I just don't think I can put this in the same tier or Disdain in the same tier as Amitaz and Kuan, but it's for sure it's on the bubble.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I already kind of alluded to that in my ramblings about this deck. I think pressure hits home on like the biggest weakness of the deck is just like, okay, do these top like 10 cards of my deck really get me to win the game or not? If it doesn't, then off to go get lunch.
Yeah.
O2 drop, let's go.
or you have to play like Soul Conversion in a deck that's like not generating a lot of bodies, because like I could see Soul Conversion as being like an answer to the card draw, but it's just. And then I'm also just not sure because the first list I built did not have Israfil, Death's Breath, and it was sort of like, okay, this looks fine, and then I'm like, wait a minute, if I don't draw Ginsetsu or have to use the Yuzuki Accelerate, I might be playing Bellringer Marzensky with no fanfare pass on turn 6.
I don't think I would ever play this deck without Soul Conversion, at least one.
What does one do though? Like what is it? What is that? That was my question. Like it's because
that's the thing where like trying to find the right 40, and I think that like you mentioned, you only see so many cards. That's why I think on some level you have to have the deck built around like, okay, I've got like 3 Bellringers and this other thing, and then I play 2 Soul Conversion. Right. I mean, I think there's just a lot of incidental ways that you can get bodies to Soul Convert, and I think I could see a deck where you don't do that, you don't go that route, but I just think that's way worse. I think you kind of need them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need Soul Conversion for sure. I just think it's like it's 1 mana, and you're killing your board presence in a meta that is so board dependent, And we're not playing bats, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
like my main thing is that it's like 1 mana where like that 1 mana could be removal. Like you really have to think about it. It's like, okay, I'm spending 1 mana to draw cards. I'm basically like taking 3 damage because they're going to hit me with Fina. And that card could have been like Angelic Snipe or something, and that's sort of and that's just 1 card, and but it's the greater issue of the consistency of the deck, and in terms of just like it's not a combo deck at all. It's actually a lot of cards that are just really high value, but you just only see 12 cards a game, like that's why last set I was playing Control Abyss a lot. And I was doing Lyrial PTP, and that felt awful. I mean, you had to do it.
Absolutely does.
It felt really bad.
Last set, my Control Abyss deck was on at one point 3 P2P, but then later it was on 2.
Yeah, I was playing.
Like I just like for most of the time I was on 3. I just was like, I can't play this deck without the card draw. It's just unplayable.
It's also like I also just feel like the Israfil stuff is like I want to test it. And I think it is the way, but it feels so like if I'm playing Amitaz and I see bro go Wings of Lust, discard Israfil on turn 5, or turn 4, then turn 5 he plays Olivia again, Evil Point. I'm not swinging the next turn. I'm not gonna tell you, okay, bro. I wonder what you're gonna do.
I'm definitely not on Israfil, I think, but I could be changed. Like I think just playing the like general plan where you're gonna win with your 6 drop, excuse me, and then instead of playing the Death Breath package, you just play like more good value stuff to get there.
And I'm on that same page too. I'm with you. But I talk, like there were some people that I talked to earlier, today that were that have been playing this like more than me because I played 0 games, but and they were very heavily on the Israfil
Well,
Desperate
I think it also depends on who you play against too, because like I think in our testing, historically we've always been very good about going, I'm gonna swing. Wait, no. Hey, whoa. Where it's like I think if you're just idly playing with people, they're just gonna swing on like the worst possible turns. Like I at the top 8 of the last Bushi Fest we went to, or maybe it was the game before top 8. I remember I had 4 turns in a row where I was trying to figure out how to set up these lethals as Forest, where I just was like, I can't swing, and then you finally win, because if you don't give it to them, they just can't take it.
Yeah.
All right. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Ward Stormhaven, or I think it's more like Ward at this point.
Might go.
I've played 0 games with this deck, and in theory, I think this deck is probably pretty mid. Have any of you guys touched any of this yet?
I love Wilbert, man. He might be one of my favorite, like top 5 Shadowverse original characters.
Mhm.
Man, he's like horrendous in this game. It's like hilarious. I don't remember when I rated him in the card review, but I think after a week or two or a week of the set being out, man, I just don't know. Like just let the man search for a ward. Just let the man search. Like would it be that crazy if he consistently dropped the 5/5, the 5/5 aura? Whoa! No, it wouldn't, because you still get rocked by Kuwait, and you still get rocked by Abataz. And it's really interesting how all of the issues that Wardhaven have historically had in digital completely translate to physical, because there is no card draw. There's just nothing. You have to play, and I was high on it because you just have to play it, but you have to play the 2-mana 2/2 that draws itself. Now this
your card draw is Prey that Wilbert hits.
Yeah,
Prey.
yeah. Now this would be a deck that Soul Conversion would be sick in.
Oh my God,
maybe Dark Offering.
It's so sad because like I think even though it's recent in the long-term history of Shadowverse, Bejeweled Shrine might be my number 2 most played Shadowverse deck of all time.
In digital,
yeah. So I'm sad.
That wasn't even like that was like Wilbert version 4. That wasn't even like the 6 mana.
I know, but it was I don't know why. Like 2 years ago or whenever that deck came out, I was just like, okay, I'm doing this, and then I played it for like 1,000 hours.
I don't know where we're tossing this.
I have not tested with or against it, but on the face of it, it's pretty. I don't know. The cards don't look like they do anything.
It has a couple good Evo cards, like the bird, the holy, what's the name? The holy bird is pretty good. It has access to like the 2-drop Evos, like I was talking about, that I think is really important in this format. But yeah, I don't know.
Does this look good?
That looks fine.
All right. I don't know why it's tier 4, because I don't think this next deck is tier 4. This is just basically like the aggro Ramlia courtly dance, right? Deck, essentially. Yeah. I've seen this deck in action a few times. I haven't played it myself. It was on my to test list, and the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't even know if I really want to spend time on this deck. It has like a lot of really cool plays and some cool high rolls with courtly dance and Ramlia coming out and stuff like that. It just maybe I just haven't seen the games enough games with it, or played it enough at all yet, actually. But I'm not really high on this deck anymore. Before, I thought this was like maybe like near the top of tier 2, but it doesn't seem that way. I mean, what have your guys?
You know why you thought that, Kit? Because you got tricked. You got tricked. This game tricks you into thinking it's Hearthstone, but it's Yu-Gi-Oh. And Courtly Dance is one hell of a Hearthstone card. It is not a Yu-Gi-Oh card.
I think I think Sword is really interesting because it's a deck that started seeing a lot of success towards the end of this format in Japan. I also think it actually has a lot of surprisingly a lot of deck building flexibility. I think there's a lot of ways to build this deck. Like I have like 3 or 4 ways that I want to try it. My main issue is one, if someone sends me Kagemitsu and Ramia for free, I would be very happy. No, I'm joking, but Ramia is real expensive for like how she is, But I I actually think this deck is potentially pretty cool, and you see the lines and you see a lot of the stuff it could do, but then you're like, wait a minute, what if I courtly dance and I see none of my 12 storms? And I'm just like, there's nothing you can do, And a lot of the sort of Kuon game plan is I need to get Leonidas down. I need to get Leonidas down and then hit the courtly dance and hit 2 storms.
Yep.
And we know how consistent Sword is. So.
Yeah, that was a lot of ifs. I mean, I have another
Exactly,
consistency issue with this deck, which is to get the most value out of Courtly Dance, you want to maximize the amount of 3s that you run. But then you get these awkward draws sometimes where like, I don't know. I mean, I think you play like, I don't think you play almost anything higher than 3 that's not Courtly Dance Leonidas.
Yeah.
But
Well, I
you
think
can get your hand can get like gummed up. Like if it's turn 4 or 5, it's you wish that you had a better ability to curve out sometimes.
Yeah. I will say, I mean, I think the courtly, I don't think you need so many 3-drops, since you can just get like up to 7, so you could just get 5 1-drops. Obviously that's not what you want to be hitting.
No, but I think there's like I don't know what the exact number is, but there's definitely a threshold that you want to try and hit that I'm sure you can do the as fan on. Because like if you're playing Courtly Dance to get things that cost less than 3, that's fine. Like that's good value, but it's like turn 6 and your opponent's going to win the game next turn. So you probably want to be hitting something that's going to have like a little bit higher of an impact. Like you said earlier, like your storm cards.
Well, but it's any number of cards up to 7. So if you hit like 3-2, you hit like 3-2 and then 2 1-drops, right?
Yeah.
That's actually what you want to hit. Because most of the time you want to hit 1 of your Stormers, Ralmia, and 2 1-drops. So Ralmia.
But have you? I mean, I don't know about you. I've missed hitting the 3, and you just feel like you don't want to play the game.
Yeah, and because that's the other thing is this is a top 5 check. I will never forget the time in set 1 I played 18 1-drop Sword, and I played the stupid Pompous Princess, and I missed, and I said I'm never playing that card ever again. So
I hate the top check design like this. Like I say it every time it comes up. Anytime it's like top check 5, and you need to hit one thing, it's frustratingly not guaranteed. In this case, you want to hit a combination of things.
Yeah, and that's sort of why you sort of like design the deck where it's like, okay, well, I have like 9 storms that are like basically the same thing,
Yeah.
Or even 12 if you consider Ralmia. I think this is just one of those decks where it's like, I just want to know, like, I'd love to talk to a Japanese player that was really like playing the game and was like good or whatever. Like, why did this have such a sudden spike towards the end of the expansion and sort of leading into the next expansion? I say expansion, I meant set, but yeah, I don't know. It's sort of a mystery, but it could just be like, hey, I just want to face is the place, and the face is not the place when I'm hitting myself like Sanguine. So,
Yeah. So
this is the premier non-hitting yourself aggro deck that plays a 1-drop on turn 1.
Yeah, personally, I kind of have this like at the bottom of tier 2.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's also because like outside of Court Dance, they did print one of the best 2-drops they'll ever print for this game, so they put it in Sword.
When I'm on a lucky ball game, yeah, for sure. Rami is awesome when my opponent's not playing the game.
Yeah, well, the text on that card is absurd.
Yeah, it's really stupid.
Yeah, it's like a lot of things in this game. It's just like there to punish stumbles, which I don't know why they love designing this game to make you get punished for stumbling when it's like the part that you get punished for stumbling. It's also the part that you get punished for stumbling is when you stumble. Like if I miss my turn 2, that's the punishment. I don't need to be further punished for missing my turn 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's also like you have one of the worst mulligan systems that I've ever played, And also the fact that you only draw 4 cards in the beginning of the game, You know, like if you drew 7, then I'd be like, okay, fine. Round me is fine because I have 7 chances to draw my removal. But no, you know.
I mean, I would rather draw 7, put 3 to the bottom.
Yeah, that'd
Like
be
just
sick.
just anything.
Yeah, that make some combo decks.
Really
Yeah,
good.
that is the balance. That is the balancing
Yeah.
mechanism. Is right. The better your mulligan, the more you reward synergies.
Yeah.
But
Come
you
on,
have
come
to,
on, lick it into it.
but like I don't know, you guys. Do you guys remember set 1 D shift where like sometimes you would
Yeah,
like
you.
see you'd see like 2 D shifts or whatever and put them on the bottom and be like, well,
Well,
all right.
they're playing.
Good thing
there
I
are
played
people playing
3.
more than 40 card D shift in set 1, so I don't know. I think,
You know. All right, well, that kind of wraps up with the deck, or not the deck, the tier list itself. Do we want to mess around with this at all, or are we kind of satisfied with where everything kind of at?
I mean, I don't feel like arguing about like Uma being the worst deck. So, or I mean, it looks like the worst deck already because it's in the lower tier. I think it should be a tier 4 deck to me. And, everything else I'm fine with. I don't really like this. Is me personally. I don't think that like I really think Control Abyss and Disdain are in tier 1 and are better than those tier 2 decks. Those are my main things, is Uma being the worst deck and being in tier 4. And
I would put the bottom 5 of tier 3. So like Garyu and to the right, I would put them all in tier 4, but
I
don't agree with that. You
don't think so?
No,
like this?
I don't think
I think they're decidedly all don't feel like they're in the same tier as Control Haven, or I guess I don't know about Hunter. I haven't played it. But this is fine. I'm sure that the Daiwa lovers will be raging in the comments, but
they're not playing the game anymore.
Yeah,
they're excited for the English release, like I am, of Uma.
Of Uma, like
the game,
the mobile game,
digitally, like
no, the mobile game, yeah.
Oh my god, I'm gonna log. I don't know anything about it. I'm just gonna log in every day till I get gold ship, so I can take a screenshot and send it to you.
I play a lot of JP, or not a lot anymore, but I'm excited for the English.
Wait, how did you get the? Are you emulating the JP version?
No, I just downloaded. I mean, I play a lot of JP like mobile. You just I
can just download. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know how they're taking stuff on the App Store.
All right, I think we're kind of satisfied with just this in general. Then, yeah. Well, let us know below in the comments how right we are, because how could we possibly ever be wrong? We've never made a mistake in our lives. So let us know what your thoughts of the tier list below in the comments. Let us know how, like I said, right we are, or how wrong we are. I guess maybe you think Wilbert is tier 1 and we're all idiots. But I think besides that, do you guys have any last minute shout outs before we say goodbye now?
I was going to
go for it.
I was just going to start asking you guys, like, do you think when we, sort of wrap this setup, do you think this will be a good meta? Or do you think we'll feel like, it was fun? Do you think there is like room for sort of some shakeup, or do you think this is the tier list, that this is how it's going to look by the end of the set?
I think, yeah, pretty much. Like, if anything changes, maybe like on the tier itself, maybe decks move up or down, but don't necessarily move tiers.
I could see Yokai to tier 1.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I agree with that.
I also, when you say like, was this a good set? I could also see post Grand Showdown us having a conversation about how that was one of the worst tournaments of any card game ever in terms of just the bad beat stories that come out of it. Because like this is just going to be the bad beat farm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, we're gonna all be in top 4, so
that's true.
And you're gonna have to give
with Hunter Forest.
Yep. And you're gonna have to get Prescia the Dodger tickets you promised.
If he has that one card.
Listen, I'm gonna lay out my deck, and he's gonna pick one random card to remove from my list. Perfect 40.
Speaking of, if you want to send Prescia cards, his address is 54.
Jesus. Oh man. Okay. I think like at the end of it's weird because I kind of like this meta, but I also kind of don't. So it's kind of like, I think, after a month or so of playing these decks, I'm gonna be sick of this meta, just because of how like I had to win the die roll to win the game mentality it seems like for a lot of these decks are. But I think getting to the point where I don't like this meta anymore will be at least enjoyable for me a bit.
I think I think we're in the like exploratory phase. I think it really helps that we're having the biggest and most important tournament probably the game will ever have.
Yeah.
With this set and why we're so like we're analyzing, we're playing a lot more than at least I haven't in a little bit, and
Yeah.
I still think we're in the cope phase, and I think Shepard is right. I think we're gonna get on September 22nd or September 20 whatever September 23rd after the tournament, and we're gonna we're gonna have a full just this game sucks. I'm good.
Yeah, it won't even be the day after. It'll be minutes after us getting out of top 8.
It'll be vlog. It'll be a vlog.
It'll just be. I'll be on Twitter being like, "This was the most bullshit card game event I've ever played in." Like,
yeah, I'm gonna go viral because there's gonna be the clip of me throwing a chair in top 8.
Just you screaming, "I lost the die roll again!"
What's the deck you gotta look out for if you think someone's cheating? Like, what's the deck? Because like it always used to be for me like sword, or because gem staff, you would just what deck in this format do you think like is it like Kuon?
I was gonna say I think I think Kuon is the opposite of cheating, where like I feel like it's so hard to gain. You can't get a faster kill timer, and your kill timer is so consistent that I feel like if you're a cheater and you're cheating with Kuon, it's like, dude, why? Like you're gonna kill them on turn 7 either way.
Yeah, I think the deck, like, it's maybe this is wrong to think, but I think the cheater deck would be Abyss, Yokai Abyss.
I think it would be aggro Abyss. I think you stack your 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop.
Yeah,
I feel like the graveyard. I think if someone's gonna cheat, the easiest way to cheat is like graveyard manipulation, like moving a certain card from my hand into the graveyard so I can get it out early or something like that. And then also like the normal setting up your draw order and stuff is probably maybe just maybe it's Amataz. Screw it, it's Amataz.
Wait, guys,
if you can stack your deck and do the perfect curve.
It's gonna be like that Uda player in Japan in One Piece where he just like did the cleanest graveyard hand swap.
Yeah.
with Gensetsu. Or they're gonna go like, whoa, I played Yuzuki off curve and I milled Israfil. That was curious,
Yeah.
Wait, what if you're like such a dedicated Uma guy that you're like, all right, Uma sucks, I'm gonna learn to cheat because I can't not play Uma.
Dude, we gotta interview that guy after.
Oh my god, we've been on for like an hour and a half. This is
we need to close this up, guys. All right, you have any last words in either of you?
This is it. Lock this in. If you disagree, comment below, and tell us how wrong you are.
I think this will be an interesting meta. It'll be interesting to shape out. I hope this will be a meta where we get to the end and it's like, wow, that was a great tournament. That was an awesome time. We saw a lot of cool decks and cool play, but alas.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about my 7 rounds in a row against Amataz. All right.
Going second.
Yeah, going second. God damn it.
That's the real. Oh, you do weighted dice or something. You do dice.
Oh, guys, I have a plan to. I have a plan to win the grand tournament.
Yeah.
I hate this. Okay, guys. Have a good night. Whatever. Thanks for sticking around. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Later.
Bye.
Bye.